All right, what is popping? Let's look at this o1 preview. We're going to do a little o1 preview review. What we're going to do is we're going to go through all the demos here. All right, so we're using latex here. One thing right off the bat, the o1 preview, if I post a question in latex, it is responding in latex, sort of. So these are latex formatted formulas, but it's still trying to do markdown, bolding, and the tabs and things like that. So here's what it looks like. Not very good. This table is completely atrocious, but it is recognizing something. It is not reasoning enough to check output. So we'll have to test that in the future to see if we can add another step of reasoning beyond that reasoning about the solution, then reason about the answer. See how far it can go in reasoning. I think we're pretty good at that, where we can kind of think about multiple things. I certainly cannot think as deeply on a single task. Given a goal, I can do a pretty crappy job on a bunch of sub goals towards a larger goal, which this model might not be so great at. So the larger goal of analyzing itself, asking it a bunch of questions, looking at the questions and aggregating their responses into some kind of meaningful thing. I'm going to do a crappy job at each one of those, but I'm going to work towards that larger goal. These models might not be good at that. All right, here's a quick example of what I'm talking about. This chat pipeline, I wanted to create a Python script that runs multiple models concurrently on the same prompt. So it starts out fantastic. We're using the OpenAI API here. We move on to LangChain, and I wanted to use the ChatGPT 4.0 and 4.0 mini model, and it lets me know that its knowledge cutoff is October 2023, and it lets me know that it's going to make some modifications using different models than what I specified, and it does do that, and it gives a bunch of additional information, a lot of verbose output that is not really necessary. And we can see these thought processes, which we will get back to later. So we go here, it's all good, all hunky-dory. Then I just wanted to review the text from this page here, and it should bring it right here, and it should see the GPT-4 model and be able to use that information to fill in the part that I wanted, which was to use the ChatGPT 4 model. Now, it does not quite get what we're looking for. So it calls it ChatGPT 4.0, which isn't quite right, and ChatGPT 4.0 mini, which also is not quite right. It clearly didn't actually retrieve anything. And the dead giveaway is that it also adds something for Gemini using Google Palm, and an API key, which Google doesn't use, and is definitely not in this URL. So that's the first hallucination. It didn't verify or check anything. It just proceeded. And if we check the reasoning here, let me see. Here is what I was talking about. It uses an assistant or an agent if you're using LangChain, and it has the assistant do some work. The assistant does some work, and it tells the assistant to do things. So this does seem like very similar to the multi-agent pipeline that LangChain has a demo for, where there's a central model that kind of routes things, or at least sends instructions to a router, and that router sends a prompt to an agent or assistant that then does further computations or further processing of text. And the processed text comes back to the main model, who then uses that in its pipeline of logical reasoning. But one of the issues is it struggles to take a step outside of the pipeline and review the entire process, which is a problem. And you can see that here. It does pick up that the assistant's not going to be able to do this task, but it continues on. It would need to do something with that. There would need to be some kind of error flag, and it would need to stop and come up with a new plan. But it doesn't do that because it's either computationally expensive or it hasn't been trained to do that. It's something the model on its own wouldn't be able to do. It's really concerned with safety. It just goes another direction. It starts looking at constraints, So I'm thinking that maybe there's a block on web data. Maybe it's not allowed to search the web, so it got past this hidden reasoning tasks and maintaining accuracy, ensuring responses are free from disallowed content, error message or something like that, and then it just goes on. It doesn't stop and come up with a new set of plans. A new plan, it just continues generating text, because that's what it does. It's text generated. It goes on. This all looks good. It goes on to generate with its previously trained logical reasoning plan of action, and just goes on incorrectly. So then it goes, look at this huge response. Then I let it know that it was a poor response. I wanted to review the web page without returning code. I just wanted to review the web page. Don't return any code, review its answer, explain the errors that it made. So take it outside of the loop and just try and get it to review the mistakes that it might have made. It reviewed the available LLMs are properly included and named. How did it do that? The assistant is tasked with revisiting the provided web page and its previous. Saying the assistant, I'm sure there's more than one. Usually you'd have a web scraping assistant, a summarization that does summarizations and text extraction. Then you'd have a coding assistant that generates code, and maybe you'd have a reasoning assistant that verifies responses, either the generated text or the code generation, the retrieved text or the code generation. And there we go. We said the assistant should confirm the factual accuracy, avoid hallucinations. I've identified inaccuracies in the model's name presented in the previous code. It appears that the model is named ChatGPT 4.0, ChatGPT, and again, it just doesn't acknowledge the fact that it can't actually search the internet, and this is all from its training data. So then it tries to correct itself. Official model names as per the OpenAI documentation. It goes on. There we go. Doesn't surf the web. It doesn't acknowledge that it can't surf the web. It just tries to move forward again. So then I give it one more shot here. I say retrieve the code listed in the quick start section of the following web page, and that should have retrieved this piece of code here. Does not. It fails to do that. And I did try this on Gemini, and Gemini was able to do that. So it's not something that's impossible. And 4.0 does not want to do that either. All the ChatGPT models claim that they're not able to retrieve text directly from web pages, and they don't do direct searching. Gemini seems to do that, but these models don't. But it doesn't seem to know that. It doesn't say that. The assistant is tasked with retrieving specific code from a web page. I think it is using a summarizer and not a straight text retriever. So the assistant is simply a summarizer, and that's why I can't retrieve direct text. I could be wrong. And it should avoid reproducing copyrighted content. So it's reproducing things instead of extracting, is my guess. And no reproduction over 70 characters. Okay, so there's just a lot of safety checks that ChatGPT has. It just doesn't seem to acknowledge the fact that it can't actually search the internet. So it goes on and it does its thing here. It tries the best it can. It does, all of this is great if the text or information, all of this is valid, but it's false claim, false premises. But the reasoning is definitely valid. I mean, this is all good stuff here. If the information that it had was good, which is a problem that I saw on LangChain as well, and LangGraph as well. That's the main problem. That even if you do get the reasoning right, you need another model to then verify that the information in the reasoning chain is correct. So the model that pieces together the chain of reasoning and then uses its ability to call other agents or use other tools, the information that it gets back from the agents or tools, it then needs to be able to check. And even if it does check and say that it's incorrect, it then would need to stop its generation process and regenerate. And it's not going to do that. It's too computationally expensive. The chain of thought method doesn't account for that, and the graph of thought and tree of thoughts method, or the ACE search methods, all of those are good, aren't really solving the problem. They're just generating a bunch of responses and picking the best one. But that's not what we do. We take information, and when we see something that's not right, either we don't see it at all, which is what I do, I might just completely miss it, or if I do see something that's wrong, I'm going to stop what I'm doing, and then we're doing something else now. If an error comes up, a new plan gets created. These don't really do that, which they might do that, but they don't do that outside of the initial generation. Maybe a graph or something would make sense. Anyway, so then I ask it to verify if it has the ability to review web pages. And then it finally is like, all right, I don't. All right, navigating web page limitations. So there we go. It can't access web pages beyond its training data. And it's got its own, keeping boundaries, addressing concerns. I don't have access to URLs. We can assist with summaries or answers based on provided information or my knowledge up to 2023. So it just was not able to understand or not able to realize that it can't review web pages. And I think that that might be an issue with the preview version. And I'm sure the o1 version actually does have an effective web browsing agent that would put it miles ahead of 4.0, which also struggles on its web retrieval capabilities. And that's where Gemini comes way ahead. So for a lot of things, Gemini here just really does a good job. So retrieve the code listed and it goes ahead and it just immediately does that. The links that Gemini produces are, in this case, was the link I gave it, but it does hallucinate links quite a bit, which is weird because it actually does search the web. So it searches the web effectively, and then it'll hallucinate links that have absolutely nothing to do with, but it might be helpful in some other way that I don't understand. So this link is not related to, it is just JavaScript examples though, so I'm not sure what it's doing, but they're interesting links. And it does a bunch of generations, so that'll be next. Hold on. All right, so the first demo is Snake. So let's take a look at that, see what we got here. We have 4.0 here, Gemini here, o1 Mini, and o1-preview. So I've got some rubrics. I've got a rubric, and here's how we're going. We're doing controlled movement. The user should respond to user input, food consumption and growth, collision detection, and the game properly ends, code, and a restart mechanism. Absolutely nothing. Mini gives no response here. It has no controlled movement, no food consumption and growth, no collision detection, and game over status. The code itself is okay. It did get 2 points for that because the actual structure of the code is not terrible. There was just some slight issues that could easily be fixed. I gave it 2 points for that. It's the code. It's all formatted as it's supposed to be. It's all in one file, embedded script and embedded CSS. All right, let's look at 4.0. Go ahead and start it right up. We're on Chrome now. Gonna forego the live server, and looks like the movement's good. Looks like it stops when it's supposed to, and looks like it restarts as it's supposed to, and the code is good. So this got a 9 out of 10, only losing points because I was having issues with it. And now we have Gemini's implementation. Function. When you restart it, as you can see, it goes out of control. There's something wrong with the interval timer, but when you hit space, when you refresh the page on its first instance, it runs pretty well. It does what it's supposed to do. So it got a 8 out of 10. The restart mechanism, I had to give it a 1, and the control movement, I gave it a 1 as well. Code looks pretty good, but I think it's something to do with the interval. Not really sure though. And finally, this is the o1 preview that we're all waiting for. But this was kind of their showcased task, so I'm really not surprised it did really well on this. Again, it doesn't really require too much verification of reasoning steps, especially if it's been trained to produce code. And that's kind of the thing that it struggles with. So it is fantastic. It does work perfectly, and it does get a 10 out of 10. But I am pretty sure that all of the models that we use today, with some better prompting, would have gotten to the same results. And if better prompting gets you to the same result, then I think it's hard to say that the model is that doing something different, which is what we want. And by doing something different, I mean capable of things that were previously not possible. I'm not so sure if that's the case. All right, the second test I'm going to show in this video is the self-attention visualization, and this one is contrary to the one that we just did, where the mini model did pretty well. All of them did poorly, but the mini model I think might have done the best. The goal is to try and represent token interaction in a sentence with vectors and lines. We have, again, 5 essential functionalities. We want token representation and hover interaction. We want curved and non-overlapping edges. We want click interaction and attention score display, latex rendering and alignment, and vertical spacing and overall presentation. So everything should be clear. Nothing should be bunched up over each other. There should be good spacing. The information should be in that classic latex or mathematical document format that people like to see. So any of the text should be pretty, and there should be good alignment. There should be good spacing from the top and bottom of the screen. So let's just see how things went. So in the demo, this is the result that he got with for o1-preview, or just o1-preview, my fault, and that it actually does not satisfy the requirements. So the vector is not in the right format. The spacing is okay, but I think it should be centered. It doesn't say that, but fair enough. There is a lot of overlap. It's not a vector, so I don't know, but let's compare. All right, so let's start with o1 mini. This is the most visually pleasing, I think, but the vector's not quite in the latex form we're looking for. There is a lot of overlap, and it is covering the text here, so we can't really move forward. It only stays in one spot, but the colors are very nice. There is a weight to the lines, though it's very hard to see. It is responsive to hovering, so I gave it a 7 out of 10. It lost points on alignment and click interaction. This is not very effective, and non-overlapping edges, it does not satisfy that. Okay, and here's ChatGPT 4.0. This should be free for everyone. o1 mini should also be free soon, but I mean, look, this just did nothing. It didn't even try. Pretty bad outcome. Most likely just a poor prompt and not really a representation of its ability to create this. There's no reason why it couldn't create this. I'm not saying that o1 mini is less powerful. I think o1 mini might, it's newer, it's been trained with, or it's been structured differently, so it might be more effective. Certainly it shouldn't be this much worse, but yeah, that's a 0 out of 10 for me. It does nothing. It doesn't do the lines. Overlapping, spacing is good, but it's way off. It's 0 out of 10 here. Alright, and this is Gemini's attempt here. It's okay, because you can't deselect the vectors, and they are in more of a latex format, but there are no arrows, but the spacing is good. Actually, there's really no arrows, but it is overlap, and the latex rendering is good, so the vertical spacing is good as well. I really think this can only be a 5 out of 10, and I think that's very generous. I think it gets 1 point for the click interaction just because it does deselect. It does get 2 points for the latex rendering because this is good latex, just the content is questionable. And it does look like latex at least. And the vertical spacing is good as well, so that's going to be a 5. And finally, we have the o1-preview model. I think is the ugliest, but technically fits the requirements the best, sort of. There's a lot of overlapping with the lines. They're all over the place. The spacing is terrible. But the vector, this is, I think, what we wanted to see. This looks pretty good. Not quite latex. Good stuff. Kind of weird brackets. I wish they were corresponding to the highest attention weight. That would have been perfect. Wouldn't really have changed the score much. Would have been better to see. For hovering over, that's perfect, so it gets a 2 for that. Curved and non-overlapping edges, I'm going to give it 1 point just because while they are overlapping, it doesn't obfuscate anything. You can still interact with the service there. Click interaction, it's pretty good, that's perfect. It's 2, not perfect, but it's 2. Latex rendering and alignment, I also give it 2. Although I think we really should drop that down to 1. So I think I am going to drop that down to 1. And vertical spacing and overall presentation, I'm going to go ahead and give that a 1 as well, because it does look good, but the spacing is terrible. So that should bring us to a 7. And the last demo we're going to look at is this squirrel game, where you have a koala and a squirrel, and you move the koala to try and touch the squirrel and avoid the strawberries. It's all in Python, and it should have been the easiest task, but for some reason, it's getting in trouble. Python is the most popular language, and it has the most code representation. So generally, Python should be where you start, and you go from Python to other languages. Let's take a look. We want to make sure that the koala can move. We want to make sure that the strawberry and the squirrel spawn. They spawn randomly and move around, and you try and chase them with the koala. And we want to make sure that when the koala touches a squirrel, you win, and when the koala touches strawberries, you lose. And you want to make sure that it looks as the instructions specify, which is, with retro, dark background, and the words OpenAI displayed, as well as a timer and an instruction screen. And the game should automatically restart. So for all of these, I'm going at a 2. I'm not going to 5, but here is a full rubric for further testing in the future with other models, hopefully Llama. All right, so here we are with o1 Mini. This is actually going to be the best model. And we go ahead and start here. Use the arrow keys to move, and we're trying to avoid the strawberries. I died. There is a little bit of it's the image. There's a little bit of a buffer around the image, so they touch before they visually touch. But the koala moves. There is spawning behavior that's pretty good. The visual elements are, I don't know if this is retro, but it's close enough. And it automatically restarts, as you can see. So that got a 10 out of 10. All right, and here's 4.0. Also, you press the spacebar to start, but look, I mean, the strawberries spawn pretty sporadically, and I don't think that it really registers collision too effectively. But visually, it's fine. It's not as retro. It's cut off in some places. The timer doesn't seem to work properly. The koala does move though, so I gave it a 2 there. 0 on the strawberry spawning. Although it does spawn, it's just not. That's not acceptable. Something wrong there. Collision detection is 1 because it does detect, but sometimes it looks like it's a little bit iffy, and it does automatically restart. So that got a 6 out of 10. All right, let's look at Gemini. Again, we have some pretty good instructions. Press any key. Looks like that works. And here we go. Movement is pretty sporadic. Similar screw up. Similar look as the 4.0. Just not great. And I haven't seen a squirrel yet. The timer doesn't work. But the spawning is less sporadic. So I will give it a 1 for that. And it gets a 7. And finally, we get to the o1-preview. Didn't work. It gets hung up on the key press. It's stuck on the instruction screen. It does look like a good retro view. I did make some changes and had it work, and it looks about the same as the others, but this first screen is a little more retro, but doesn't get any points. It absolutely does not run. Complete farce, and a shame. Alright, so to summarize, it's not really clear which model is, quote, better, but what we are seeing is an improved ability to break a problem down into steps. And if the problem that you have gets easier when you break it down into steps, then o1-preview is going to do a good job. It's going to help you out. Alright, so what I think this is replicating is the graphs structures from LangGraph. And I think it's something like a multi-agent collaboration that you see in one of the demos from LangGraph, where you have, in this case, there's a researcher, a chart generator, and a tool caller. These are 2 different agents or large language models that work with each other to produce output. So you'll see something like that, or maybe there might be more or there might be less. But generally, I think the idea here is now they're using one agent or one main model to oversee other models doing smaller tasks. So I believe it's going to break down a problem into subproblems, and then it is going to call on a specific tool or agent that performs some kind of task to solve those subproblems, and it's going to then aggregate all those results and maybe do one final check. But the issue is, even here, as you can see, there's no meta checker. So if something goes wrong, you need another model to check the whole overall process. So the main model is not going to check the outputs of the helper models that it has access to. It can't. It's a pipeline from top to bottom. It's generating, so it's waiting for an input. It might check for format or something like that, or there might be a tool to verify the calculator came back correctly. But it's not going to be able to analyze the entire output again, unless it does do that. And then if it does analyze the entire output, then you have to verify that that analysis is correct. So at some point there's it's a never-ending chain of models. So this is not this is a issue that has already existed, and you do see that. That's why I think the reasoning is very good, but it does seem to get tripped up, especially in the earlier example when it didn't realize that it couldn't search the internet because it just has no way to verify what's happening metally. And that's it for sure. Peace.